Hey, thanks everyone for being here. Welcome to our third fireside chat. This is part of a series we're doing with Coffee with Case Data, so updating your clients and the time it takes to drink your morning cup of coffee. So today we have Mick Gunter from Daggett Shuler joining us, and we're going to talk about the legal industry and law firms and some other fun things. So Mick, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
So we're going to just dive right in. Do you come from a long line of family members who run law firms?
Gosh, no. My dad was in the military. My mom was a school teacher, and I don't even know if I liked lawyers growing up. I don't know if I knew a lawyer growing up. So, yeah, I kind of knew.
Where did you grow up?
My dad was in the military, so we moved around a good bit. New York, North Carolina, Virginia, California. So, bounced around a lot.
How did your dad being in the military really shape your upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't really realize it till, I've lived in Winston-Salem for 25 years. I didn't realize how accustomed I was to meeting new people, trying new things, doing different things. So I think that was a big part of it, and everybody kind of having a very common, you talk about a very homogeneous community, living on a military base. Everybody's got the same job. Everybody wears the same clothes to work. It's, so I think from that standpoint, it definitely shaped kind of who I've become quite a lot.
Yeah, and how did meeting so many different people at an early age maybe impact the way that you view interactions with other people, community, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the one hand, I always have a tendency to feel like a guest. I never really felt like I was from anywhere. But I always had a pretty easy time striking up conversations, making new friends, making new relationships with folks.
So how did your upbringing really affect you ultimately deciding to join the Marines?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a very early age, that sort of say thing, maybe the military, not legal industry, but the military was kind of the family business. I always just assumed that that's what I would do. And so had an ROTC scholarship, went to college, was an officer in the Marine Corps, and that's kind of where I got started.
What was your job in the Marines?
I was an artillery officer, so I learned a lot about logistics. You learned a lot about wireless networking and computers and things that sort of early in the technical side of things that shaped a lot in terms of after I got out of the military doing some IT consulting and things. So that was interesting.
Was your plan to be in the Marines forever when you joined?
I did. At 22, I didn't really have any view of anything other than retiring from the Marine Corps and making it a career.
Yeah. What ultimately drove you to leave the Marines?
I think it was a few things. One, I didn't go to the first Gulf War, 91. I didn't go to that war, and I had been around people who didn't go to Vietnam. And so it was sort of a career, think about being in sales and never selling anything is kind of career limiting. And I think the other thing was because it was sort of that I grew up in it, I knew what the next 20 to 30 years of my life was going to be like. I could really map it out. And I think I came down on the side of that being boring. And I just wanted to experience more. Like, I can do more. I can sort of challenge myself to do and experience other things.
And so what did you end up doing next?
I got out, I looked at buying a business. I ultimately went to graduate school and met my wife there, and that's how I got to Winston-Salem and, stayed there.
Were you a good student?
I was an okay student. I think, when I got out of college, my mom died when I was in undergrad, and I was on scholarship. I was going to the Marine Corps. I had things to do, and looking back, it certainly wasn't on purpose, but I didn't know these things like counseling centers and things. I didn't know those existed. I was going to the Marine Corps, so I ended up going to get a master's degree in counseling, and so I think that in a lot of ways was how I dealt with the fact that my mom was killed in a car accident and all of those things. So the academic part of it was interesting, but I think, between sort of healing from that and meeting my wife, those were the bigger accomplishments than the grades.
Yeah. Now we're skipping ahead a little bit
Yeah.
when talk about Daggett Shuler, but when your mom passed away in an accident. How did maybe that experience impact, or how do you think about that experience today now that you're in a, an environment that works in that space?
I think that, at Daggett Shuler, I think there's, definitely a very strong cultural emphasis on helping people. And there's an acknowledgement that some people can help themselves. And, one of the things I like about Daggett Shuler is there's just that's where we focus. How do we help people? How do we help people through this trying time in their life? And so that's, I see that as a strong positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I know you were a surfer, and so what started your love for surfing?
Living 15 minutes from the beach. I mean, just that's kind of what a lot of the people we ran track. I ran track. We played sports in school, and we'd go surfing on the weekends. We'd go. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You're also a pilot, so
yes.
There's definitely a strong adventurer in you, and I can see what ultimately drove your love of flying.
Yeah, I think on the one hand, it was transportation. I was working, I was traveling a lot. Most people don't know where Sikeston, Missouri, or Paw Paw, Michigan are, much less how to get from one to the other, and it's not easy by commercial travel or by driving. And so I knew a lot of small business owners that were pilots. The second Top Gun just came out. I was in high school when the first Top Gun came out, so I think everybody of that year wanted to be a pilot. But yeah, it was a little bit of a cross of loving to be able to get places. I mean, it was great to be able to hop down here in an hour yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. So what came next after graduation?
Gosh, I worked at Wake Forest for a year or so, and mentioned got married, and it's kind of same conversation you're talking about. Is that sort of love of adventure? Things in the university world move incredibly slowly, and it was a good sort of transition. It sort of let me network. But then I went into IT consulting, and a company called EDS. They hired a lot of former military officers, and I spent a bunch of time doing that.
Who are some of your big influences in your time in academia?
Big influences? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I got pretty close with the athletic director at Wake Forest when I was there, and he definitely was a mentor. And then the head football coach, interestingly enough, was talking about culture and team and building team, and we spent a lot of time talking. He was very interested in the Marine Corps and sort of the culture of the Marine Corps and in that sort of sense of tradition. It's kind of interesting looking out over the Citadel talking about the military.
Yeah.
But,
so how did you end up in more technology focused roles?
It was that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had this sort of background in the military. EDS, like I said, they hired a lot of former military officers, and there was a lot of, sort of that you're a smart guy, you'll figure it out. And, so back then there was, Cisco and Microsoft certifications, and I did some of those at night and took jobs, and I think I changed jobs about every 18 months for 3 or 4 years as I kept building skills. And it was fun. It was interesting. It was exciting because it changed a lot, and you could really see an impact on businesses at that time, going from either no computers or I worked in a manufacturing space that was AS400 based, that was very limited in what they could do, and you start dropping PCs on desks and they can communicate. It was just incredibly powerful. And you're in a manufacturing facility that's a half a mile long. You might think that the supervisor on the section of the line 200 yards away would be able to talk to the other supervisor, and they didn't. So email was incredible, and now we take Slack and texting and everything for granted. But at that time, it was really powerful to sort of drive a lot of change and whether it's efficiency or increased quality of products being built. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Was that the first time where you really started to see technology as a driver for operational efficiency?
It really started in the military. I think I was on a deployment. We used barcodes for the first time ever to load a ship, and then we knew where everything was. And we hearing people talking about, you used to have to go walk the ship to go find things, or it was on pieces of paper that were tacked up on a wall. And so to be able to see that advance, I think the military was just sort of an indicator. And then when I got into working in that environment, into a lot of manufacturing environments, it was really easy to see.
So fast forwarding a little bit, you joined Blue Rhino shortly after they IPO'd. How did you see technology start to transform that industry?
Yeah, I mean, that was, Blue Rhino was kind of a disruptor in a space where, propane had been sold at, thousands of gallons at a time. They're selling it, just a few gallons at a time, small dollar transactions. And literally some of the people said this will never work because the way they would make deliveries was with the old pad and a paper. And so one of the early failures at Blue Rhino was we tried to make a Apple Newton into a delivery device, and like about everything else about the Apple Newton, it didn't go well. But we actually had delivery handhelds. Could go, you could sign all the things that you take for granted now. In the late 90s, like nobody was doing that. We were so excited. We had handheld delivery tickets where it was creating, a digital PDF that was never paper. We were doing, EDI transactions with Walmart and Lowe's and doing all this billing. And, one of the coolest things was we went from 25 million in revenue to 200 million in revenue. And think about that in increments of hundreds of dollars of transactions. So your transaction's $100 and you grew 10x. Our accounts receivable department stayed the exact same size. So think about that scalability. And so I think that with efficiency, I've thought a lot of is what's the scalability, and that's almost as important. Are you efficient, but can you scale?
Yeah. What started driving you then from more of the technology side to the business side of things?
Yeah, I think I was always interested in that. And part of the being in the technology side is I had access to everybody. So I could, on the manufacturing floor, I could walk into the CFO's office, the chief operating officer's office, the line supervisor, talk to them and talk about what was going on in the business. I just found it very intriguing. And I think being in the military, working for folks that didn't have a lot of exposure to the military, going back to school a third time to get my MBA just sort of validated all of the experience I'd gotten in the military from logistics and other things. And through that experience, I really kind of had a, enjoyment of a little bit of a jack of all trade. I really liked, finance, but the operational stuff is where things have really settled in, and that's where I've spent most of my time.
What ultimately led you then to become one of the founding team members of Primo Water?
Yeah, I mean, that was exciting. I was, finishing my MBA. I was doing I was sort of on the, what else can you do? My finishing thesis with my MBA was working with a guy from John Deere and doing a prototype and a presentation to do propane-powered lawnmowers, so commercial lawnmowers and golf courses and stuff, which actually exists now. So we get bought out. My wife's pregnant with our third child. I've got this job that we got bought out. I have no job. I'm the furthest thing from essential to the operations of the business, and being part of that and not being part of the IPO at Blue Rhino, I just thought, wow, to be, from day one. There were four of us, sitting at a table like this with blank sheets of paper, and to do that and be part of taking that from absolutely nothing, through the public offering and Culligan's a big water brand. We bought a division of Culligan post IPO. So it was just a lot of exciting things. And that drive for, that excitement in work, not just whatever you're doing, but to do something that's challenging and new.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
How are the business models similar or different from your time at Blue Rhino?
Yeah, so oddly, the propane tank that you hook up to your gas grill and a 5-gallon jug of water are very similar in size, very similar in weight. So it was a logistics problem, and so the distribution was very similar. I think from that standpoint, very similar, but very different in that, when you can get tap water for free, why are you going to lug a 50-pound jug of something home from the store? And then the whole idea of, okay, if I bring an empty jug back, do I get credit for it? How do I get credit for it? Those were some interesting challenges at retail, but not that different than what we've done at Blue Rhino.
Mm. What were some of the other challenges that you faced with trying to scale that organization over a long period of time?
Yeah, I think, again, I ended up, the technology part, we just sort of did better what we did. So that was spent most of the time on the operations logistics side, and it was really, the retail price was much lower. So you can't afford to drive, and gas prices being high right now, you can only imagine, you can only afford to drive it so far. So I spent a lot of time going out, meeting bottled water companies and contracting them to bottle our water, deliver our water, and then build the standards around that, make sure that they were compliant with all of the food safety standards that, when you're selling into a Walmart or wherever, you've got to be at the absolute top of those standards. And so that was where I spent a ton of time.
Mm. What was it like to participate in the eventual IPO of Prima Water?
Oh man, I think it's like the Super Bowl of business school, right? It's, you do these things and you hear about it, but it was really interesting to just see. I think we raised $200 million at the IPO, or between that and the follow-on, and to just go into meetings and sit across the table from people and talk about your business. And some of them, had obviously studied and knew more, had really insightful questions. We learned a ton about the business and how to make the business better from having to expose, our business model, business plans and everything. But just so exciting. That is, kind of our society and type of capitalism at its finest is, are they going to entrust their dollars in you to grow your business?
When we had dinner last night, you told me a story of 2 different presentations when you were preparing for
Sure,
the IPO.
Sure.
Would you share a little bit about those?
So just kind of extremes. So our founder, CEO, and CFO had done the IPO at Blue Rhino. I got to go along for the presentations in New York. And you're sort of in a Suburban, you hop out, you get in an elevator, you go up the elevator to whatever floor, and you sit down, and sometimes you've got 20 minutes, sometimes you got an hour. You kind of come down the elevator, and then you see the other group that's doing the same thing you're doing, and they're trying to go public too. And so the whole spectrum, but I was sharing with Andy the kind of the ends of the spectrum. One, there was literally like a guy, like maybe he was 25, he might have been wearing a clean t-shirt and a hoodie. Jeans, a hoodie, and we walk in, he's kind of like, what do you got? And, we're walking, I'm like, what's up with that guy? And it's like, well, his job is he listens to every single, IPO roadshow presentation that comes through New York, and he works for, I don't know what, money fund it was, but, he manages, X $100 million. I'm thinking, in his t-shirt and hoodie, that is sweet gig if you can get it. But it was just very just, what do you got? And he just listened, and we got done. He was like, thanks, see ya. The other end of the spectrum was like, New York City, tall buildings, Central Park. We get in this we come out of the elevator, and it's like, I feel like I'm in an art museum based on what's on the walls. And it's kind of like being in a movie. Everyone is beautiful. Everyone is smart. everything is in its place, and they walk us in and sit us down, and we're looking out like over the full length of Central Park, unobstructed view of Central Park, and sit down, and there's the sort of senior guy. He's, hey Billy, good to see you again. Great deal with Blue Rhino. Loved what you did there. Tell me what's going on now. And we start getting in the presentation, and this young analyst who is just in all ways stunning starts asking questions, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she knows this business better than we do. That's like intimidation at its finest. But to go through those where some people totally non-reactive, some had clearly studied and knew and asked great questions. So to be able to just have that experience, and then to stand on Times Square and watch the trades get matched and watch how that happens was just phenomenal. And I'll I think more valuable than my MBA. Every day we were in New York, the guy who was sort of leading our IPO effort, he and I would go run in Central Park every morning, and that no MBA class taught me what that guy taught me, on 4 or 5 mile runs across the course of a week. It was really neat.
What ultimately then led you to leave Primo after the IPO?
Yeah, I think I had committed, from when we started, I had committed to staying for a period of time and doing the IPO. We did an acquisition, like I said, and sort of integrated that. And it was kind of the same thing of when I left the military. I sort of, I think I've learned all I can learn here. I want to step forward. And I had an opportunity to take on a role as the CEO of a small public company. It was sort of a turnaround situation. Because of the startup experience, I joined the board, and I went in and kind of did what had to be done to turn that company around. They went from losing money to, I lost track, 12, 16 quarters of profitability after that was over. Hired a new CFO, got them, restructured their bank deal. So I thought that was going to be a stepping stone to that life of sort of being a public company executive. And then, had some real heart-to-heart conversations with my wife. And you read Forbes, you read the Wall Street Journal. That's in a lot of cases a 2 or 3 year job, and then you're moving. And I had been traveling a lot, and my wife's got she's a small business owner. We've got 3 boys. When we got married, we really committed to family and having a strong family and staying in, there's only about 3 rules that'll, get you divorced or shot, and probably shot first. And I mean that not literally. But, we really put a lot of intentionality into being married and having a strong family. And there was an incompatibility with that lifestyle. And it took sort of being right on the precipice of it to say, oh, this isn't going to go well. And so went home to Winston-Salem, worked on the resume, did the things, again, looked at buying businesses. And that's how I got into working in a law firm. Is I went to, the websites of the colleges I went to and the job boards, and, I see this thing, Chief Operating Officer, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm like, oh, well, that's for me. And instead of a law firm, I was like, it's not for me. And, but, it's that, probably that military, but you do the things, you do the things you're supposed to do, and it'll work out. It's like, well, maybe it'll turn into a networking opportunity. Well, it turned into a job. And so I spent, 7 years in, law firm, about 1,200 employees, doing work in 7 states at the time. Went in, sort of built a lot of process, built a lot of efficiency, and, had a lot of fun doing it, and got to be home. I never missed, I think I missed 1 lacrosse game my oldest son. I never missed a performance. I traveled a lot, and that was kind of the compromise, but I was always home on the weekends. It was completely different from the pressures of a public company or the pressures of, serving retail when, if Walmart calls at 3 a.m. on Saturday, you just jump and go. You don't, it's not like, oh, it's the weekend, I'll call you Monday. That's not that lifestyle. So that's been a nice change, and it was good for the family, and really taught me that, it's not, life is about a lot more than titles and dollars and position and those things.
So going into this law firm, what really surprised you about the legal industry as you entered this market for the first time?
Yeah, I think one of the things that struck me, I was talking about Blue Rhino, like we had handheld computers before the UPS guy did. I was walking around, like there was things that we did, 10 years ago that they had never heard of. So very behind, very, very far from the cutting edge with technology. And so that's taken a lot of getting used to of, it's not through any fault of anybody. It's just, it's not had, not had that drive for efficiency and automation and things that a lot of other industries have had. So.
How did you push that business forward with operational efficiency?
Man, we, hired a new CFO, a new COO, kind of new management team, and put standards in place. There was, I want to say 15 offices or so. When I got there, it was 7 states. We were able to sort of standard. Each office was almost like its own little franchise. It had its own culture, it had its own ways of being, and they sort of had, almost like their own IT stuff a little bit. So we made some standards, and we had kind of a processing center, and that's what we'd kind of go observe how things were done everywhere, pull it back into a central processing space, and the mantra was kind of standardize and automate. So we'd get it done, similarly or consistently, so that you could sort of amass the work, and then get it standardized. And then once it's standardized, then it lent itself to automations quite often. So it was a lot of fun, and that led to really kind of having a cost advantage by being really pressing that efficient. We had what turned into a cost advantage. And it was a struggling time. A lot of these law firms were doing business with banks. The financial crisis had been a boom time. Post-financial crash was kind of a bust time for them. So there were a lot of folks that were either, late in their career and didn't have a transition plan, or they were struggling financially. And we were able to go in and make acquisitions and sort of fold that work into our environment. Basic industry consolidation stuff that if you went to business school is not surprising, but if you went to law school, you kind of don't have that orientation. And so that was part of that really benefit of all of that automation and efficiency. It really opened the door to that, which allowed that firm to continue to thrive, even though that corner of the legal space was declining.
Mm. Yeah, and I think when we look at a part of the legal industry like that, that's when the opportunities are shrinking, to keep your business ahead of the times, you have to continue to drive efficiency and grow, but sometimes that growth doesn't always look like what we think it should look like. Right. I mean, how did that business ultimately, continue to thrive until you ultimately went to Daggett Shuler?
So when I got there, I said there was about 1,200 employees and contractors and kind of all in headcount doing work in 7 states. When I left, we were doing work in 17 states and had more on the order of 500 or 600 employees. About the same number of attorneys, but you see that that's the impact of that automation. And you had a lot more consistent outcomes and just a lot less staff.
Yeah, and I think for the legal industry today, a lot of law firms, they kind of count their success by the number of staff members that they have. But How did your experience with, not just business school, but all of your different experiences really drive your mindset on, creating a business that can last, not just a business that is meant to employ the most people possible.
Well, and I think that's it. I mean, I think it's why do you have, why do people come to work? Why do you have employees? What is their purpose? And, there's a lot of things that, machines, robots, software can do that, quite frankly, people would find boring and error prone and just not. And so I think what I've always tried to focus on is wanting to make sure that there's, work that people will find, rewarding, empowering, challenging, and stimulating. And if it's not that, then how do we automate it out? But also, what's the model of the business? And it goes back to that scalability piece. And I think that's, one of the challenges in law firms is a lot of times they don't have a lot of scalability because it's very linear. It's very, it's the attorney's billable time, or it is the time it takes for the attorney to review or do. So it's hard to scale in a way that, as you get bigger, your cost of doing business relatively goes down. A lot of times it's linear, and I think that's a challenge for the legal industry, and part of why it hasn't sought the cutting edge of technology the way some other industries have.
Yeah. Well, so what ultimately then led you to Daggett Shuler?
Yeah, I've known David and Griff for 20 years. He's actually leaving for Germany next week to do his 40-something year of Ironman triathlons. Incredible athlete, incredible guy. We met from doing triathlons. And when I went to work for the one law firm, I said, hey, can we get together for breakfast once in a while and just talk about things, teach me about the legal industry. And so over time, his office manager was, nearing retirement. I was nearing exhaustion with traveling, and then, with sort of the way things were going, the conversation evolved into what seemed like it would be a lot of fun. And, they were on, a great client server case management system that was probably the best thing going in the early 2000s, needed to be upgraded. Everything technology-wise just needed to be upgraded and refreshed. And so it was a good thing. It was a good, it was a good continuing pursuit of, I can work and really enjoy my family and enjoy what I'm doing. And that same question, does it stroke my ego to be in a law firm with 120 attorneys versus 10? And at first I had to get used to that. And then I realized the challenge was going to be there, the stimulation and excitement would be there. So it just fell into place like a logical step.
Now, what drove David and Griff to ultimately pursue you to help drive efficiency in their firm?
Well, I think that they, knew my track record, knew my experience, knew that I could bring some things to the table that other folks don't. I mean, I think we had some conversations of, I don't know that there's a lot of personal injury law firms with, their general manager's got an MBA from Duke. But again, knowing them, knowing the culture of their firm, just knowing that we really aligned on purpose and principles, it seemed like it would be a good thing to do. And just kind of, like I said, it just fell together very naturally when it started falling together.
Yeah. Now, is their plan to pass the firm down to their kids, or what is their long-term vision?
Not their kids, but they definitely very much a mantra of long-term impact on the community, long-term impact on employees, sustainability for the employees. And so we've got kind of a cohort of younger attorneys and a cohort of older attorneys, and that's something that David is very much working on, and how do you do that generational transition? And I think that's a challenge in any practice-based business or any small business. That's if you're not passing it on to family, how do you pass that on? And so that is something that will has to happen. Father time doesn't stop, so it will ultimately happen, and it's good that they recognize that, and we're working on that.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you're doing within the firm to really drive efficiency or set the firm up, for success long term?
Yeah. So I think one of the first things I did was I knew I needed to create space. So I came in and I took sort of the administrative function and did a lot of just basic automations, things that I'd say probably the administrative, the bookkeeping, the accounting, the trust balancing, those things probably takes certainly less than half the time it did when I got there. And that sort of created space for other things. But, like I said, sort of fundamentally everything technology-wise. But probably the biggest is we migrated from Needles to Litify. Case status has been a huge part of that. And again, focusing on, our employees that are client-facing, are they having meaningful interactions with clients? And giving them, we had a portal platform in Needles that was good for uploading documents and other things, but the richness of the checklists and the richness of interaction of case status has just been, it's like handing somebody a whole new set of tools. Instead of giving somebody a a hammer, I'm giving them now they've got like a whole bag of tools, and just the ability to have visibility to their work. That's been real powerful, and we've been on Litify at this point for less than a year. So,
in the past, your law firm experience was more B2B, dealing with banks on the other end. How has this experience with a consumer-based, personal injury firm changed the way you think about operating?
Yeah, that's almost been disorienting, because even this is really kind of the first time it's all like a small business. I mean, it's like a small retail store, and the consumer's got to come to your receipt. We were walking down Broad Street the other night, and it's well, am I going to get my ice cream on the left side of the street or the right side of the street? There's a lot of places to get ice cream. Which one am I going to pick? And for the law firms, it's similar. So I think every law firm's got to find their niche and find how they are going to approach the marketplace. And for Daggett Shuler, we're very relational, very intentional, and focused on building a relationship and being helpful to every single person we interact with. And so while we're trying to be more productive and more efficient in how we do things, we're not going to encroach on that, because that would destroy what makes Daggett Shuler the product that we're presenting to the public.
Now, it's clear that David and Griff have given you a lot of authority to make decisions and drive the firm forward, not unilaterally, but you have authority in the firm. How important is the ability for staff members to be able to make decisions? How important is that? Is that to driving the efficiency of law firms?
I think it's crucial, because a lot of smaller law firms, it's really a lot of times you've got an attorney-paralegal relationship. Maybe an attorney has a couple paralegals, legal assistants, and they almost can operate as their own little business, even though they're under a large umbrella. And quite frankly, if you sort of, the military, somebody at the top says do something, you just do it. You don't even think. I've never been in a law firm. It's almost the opposite. A lot of critical thinkers in the legal industry. And so particularly if you try to dictate something, you're immediately going to get a ton of pushback. And if you suggest something, they may think about it. But I think, as I interact with more, particularly smaller law firms in this space, the firms that seem to be getting the most out of their technology, the most out of it, are very bottoms-up participatory. You know, is everybody using Slack and things? No. But even if it's just a team huddle where you say, okay, how does everybody do this? You know, which tab, you know, do you go to first? Well, then let's put that one first. You know, what are the things you always ask the client for when you have a new case? Well, let's create a checklist and push it out through case status, and then I can't forget to do it. And so that's been real powerful to get things done, is to get into that. And I think because we were changing platforms, a lot of that was more centralized top-down transition. We're moving into a phase that is much more, you know, putting something out and taking that feedback and learning how do people work and then bringing that up. So that's real important. The other thing that's important is, you know, the ability to make a decision. I think there's I hear a lot of firms that discuss and debate and talk about things for a really long time. And I get it. I mean, you know, the military taught me to make decisions really, really fast. And if you make a bad one, just make another one. Until you get shot, you can keep making new decisions. You know, that was sort of the way the military taught us. In law school, they're talking about being in front of a judge, and every word that comes out of your mouth goes down in record, and you can't say just kidding and go back. So I totally understand it, but from a dynamic business standpoint, it can be hard. It can be a real challenge to be decisive and move forward, because you want to make sure you're going to get it right. And that concept of, hey, we're going to make our best effort, and we're going to observe it, and we're going to change really fast if it's not right. That's tough. That's real tough.
Yeah. What advice do you have for firm administrators or other, you know, operational type roles in a law firm where they don't have a business background? What advice do you have for them, you know, as they can kind of move forward and look for ways to, you know, become more efficient?
I think, you know, I think one of the big things is a lot of people get hired into that sort of firm administrator job, and they've got some HR experience or some bookkeeping experience, and it's almost like a job. The job is to do those tasks or do those things, and I think to really bring the most value to the firm is to get that done and make that real efficient. And so if you're filling your day, you know, writing check, reconciling accounts, hiring, you know, doing the HR things, making sure that, you know, all the, you know, facilities things are up to speed, you know, to really bring value to the organization, you've almost got to master that and compress it so you've got time to get out and listen and observe, because that firm administrator role is one where you can get and listen to each of the little teams talking about what they do, the different departments, the different practice areas, and identify those opportunities to standardize and improve and gain scale. So I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah. As you're looking at really the next 5 or 10 years of this firm, you know, what's next? Like, what's coming up for Daggett Shuler?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, continuing to develop the staff, continuing to develop, you know, and really leverage the platform that is Litify. I think that's, there's a ton of opportunity there. But also just dynamically adapt. The legal world is changing at an accelerating pace. And so I think we're going to have to keep, you know, understanding the marketplace and making adjustments and changes to make sure that we don't get left behind.
Yeah. Well, Mick, thank you very much for the time together. It was great to chat with you about this, and thanks for coming to Charleston and spending some time with us. So,
appreciate the hospitality.
Yeah. Well, thanks. We're going to open up to the audience for some questions for Mick to answer. So, Dan?
Sure. So the core principles at Daggett Shuler, when David and Griff, it starts with teamwork, service, and excellence. And you know, I don't quite have it memorized to recite, but there's a one page. It's pretty much at everybody's desk. It's you know, about the size of that window outside of my office. But it really just goes into we work together as a team. We're professionals. We debate and discuss, but we align and agree and go forward, and we do great work. I think that's one of the big things is some people focus on perhaps speed and outcome. We tend to focus on letting outcomes be outcomes and doing excellent work and trusting that will lead to the outcomes that we desire.
Based on your experience, what would that be?
So a piece of advice based on a lot of different experience. Yeah, a lot of people look at what I've done and my resume makes no sense. I have a master's degree in counseling. I've got an MBA. I was in the Marine Corps. I worked in the propane industry, the water industry, the legal industry, and have owned a couple small businesses along the way, just for fun. I think what I would say is, obviously there's no one way, there's no right course, and I think part of that story I shared as well is I've never really thought of myself as money driven per se, but it's easy as you get going on your career, you're looking for that next rung on the ladder, and sometimes that's not the right thing to do, even though it seems to be the thing to do. So I think stay true to yourself, set your priorities. We were talking earlier about kids and sports and raising family. If at the end of the day, are you fulfilled in the impact you made, not only on yourself, but on your family and the people around you? What your title was and how much money you made is not really going to make a lot of difference. It will work out. And that's, there's an element of faith there that it will, if you show up, if you do the right thing every day, it will work out. Gosh, so something that got pushed back, but ultimately has made a big impact. So, interestingly, I joined Daggett Shuler. I think my first day on the job was either the day before or the day of North Carolina doing the COVID lockdown thing. So really, the majority of my time at Daggett Shuler has been reacting to that. There was nominally zero ability to work from home. There were needles, very office-based. So a lot of managing of that, managing these transitions. So I don't know that we're there yet on some things, but I know that looking at ways of changing the way we approach work or the way we do everything in-house versus maybe outsourcing some things. Those are the things that I'm still working on that will take time, and I think, again, we'll pilot them small, see how they go, and if they go well, we'll drive through and change. But yeah, so a little preliminary on that. So moving from more consumer products based business or being in the IT industry to moving into the legal industry, I think the biggest eye opener was where the legal industry by and large has been with technology compared to what I was experiencing. And I think, for example, in the late 90s, I spent some time in a medical billing organization that was scanning and OCRing, hundreds of thousands of documents a week. I've gone into law offices in 2020 something, and I'm talking and I rattle off OCR and they're like, "What's that?" Oh, we deal with information. We deal with the information on these documents, but we're still putting what I'd call dumb documents into your database. So if you want to go back and search, well, how many of my clients, whatever, went to this doctor, had this issue? Where is it? You can't, because none of the documents are OCR'd. And so, that's the type of thing of having to not, and I'm, fairly energetic, not be like, well, my God, I can't believe. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Nobody wants to hear their baby's ugly, right? everybody's baby's beautiful. You know, everybody has done their absolute best. But to have to go back and say, okay, and yet we can do these things and we can progress. So that's probably been some of it, is just sort of having to recalibrate. So.
All right. Great. Well, that's a wrap.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
so much,
you.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
This was great.
So.